Have you ever noticed that the harder you try, the worse things get? The more you worry, the more chaotic life becomes. Why does calm bring success and panic bring destruction? Today, we uncover the brutal truth Machiavelli would whisper in your ear. Worry is your enemy. Power begins the moment you stop chasing control. Worry is not what you think it is. You've been told that worrying means you care, that it shows responsibility, that it means you're preparing for something serious. But Machiavelli would laugh at such ideas because he knew the truth. Worry is not strength. It is an addiction, an emotional reflex that weak men cling to in the absence of real strategy. You think worrying is helping you prepare, but it isn't. It's paralyzing you. You sit with thoughts racing, heart pounding, predicting 10 different disasters, and doing nothing about any of them, and still you feel like you're being productive. That illusion is how weakness disguises itself. Real power doesn't pace the floor, it waits in silence, it plots, calculates, adapts, but never panics. Machiavelli observed this in rulers, in clergy, in common men. The ones who rose to power were rarely the most virtuous. They were the most mentally disciplined, not immune to fear, but immune to the habit of fearing. You see, worrying is a learned behavior. It becomes your default mode. A man fails once, and the next time, he prepares to fail again. Not through action, but through constant overthinking, and every hour he spends worrying is an hour stolen from decisive movement. If you study the mind of a schemer, someone who shapes outcomes, bends people, twists situations to his advantage, you'll notice something shocking. They are unnervingly calm. It's not because they don't face chaos. It's because they know this. Panic serves no one. Worry helps nothing. And emotion clouds advantage. Weak men justify their worry with, but I'm being careful. I'm thinking it through. No. Thinking and worrying are not the same. Thinking leads to action. Worrying leads to hesitation. The worrier burns energy with no result. He imagines confrontation, but never prepares for it. He plans conversations in his head, but avoids them in real life. He analyzes failure, but never risks success. And eventually, he convinces himself that his paralysis is prudence. And that lie is how failure becomes a lifestyle. To Machiavelli, everything is about perception, both how you see the world and how the world sees you. And when a man worries openly, constantly, and visibly, what does the world see? Not a thinker, a coward. People don't trust a man who's always anxious. Why? Because anxiety is contagious. It weakens morale. It signals instability. If you doubt yourself, others will doubt you 10 times more. But here's the Machiavellian irony. Most worriers believe their worry gives them control. They think, if I just keep thinking about every possible outcome, I'll be ready for anything. No. They're not gaining control, they're losing it. True control comes from clarity, focus, and the willingness to act even in uncertainty. Worry creates the opposite: mental fog, emotional fatigue, decision paralysis. What you're really doing when you worry is feeding your ego's fear of failure. You are trying to feel pain in advance, hoping it will soften the blow if something goes wrong. But that pain doesn't prepare you. It drains you. It makes you emotionally weaker before the battle even starts. And when the moment to act finally arrives, you're already exhausted. From the war inside your head, the most dangerous enemy is not the one outside your walls. It's the doubt you've nurtured in silence. Machiavelli taught that men must learn to govern themselves before they govern others. And to govern yourself means to kill the reflex of worry. Because every time you indulge in it, you lose credibility in the eyes of others and in the eyes of your own psyche. Worry becomes a story, a voice that whispers, "You're not ready. Something will go wrong. People will judge you. You'll lose." And every time you listen, you make that voice louder until it becomes your ruler. There's a reason men like Machiavelli, Caesar, and Napoleon could walk into a room and control it without speaking. It wasn't just power, it was emotional discipline. They did not radiate neediness, they did not seek reassurance. And they never apologized for acting, because they had already conquered the battlefield of their own minds. Meanwhile, the modern man checks his phone every 2 minutes. His mind a storm, his confidence borrowed. His thoughts crowded with what-ifs, and maybe laters. He calls this being realistic, but Machiavelli would call it addiction, to powerlessness, to indecision, to emotional indulgence masquerading as preparation. When you live in a state of constant worry, what you're really doing is worshiping fear, and anything you worship will eventually own you, control. That's the modern man's favorite fantasy. You think you're in control because you schedule every hour of your day, check every notification, double confirm every message, and obsess over how others perceive you. You believe that if you could just tighten the grip on your life, your relationships, your future, then finally you would feel safe. Finally, you'd feel in power. But Machiavelli would warn you, that's not power. That's delusion, because real control is a lie, a comfort we sell ourselves in order to escape the chaos of life. And those who chase control with desperation rarely understand how power actually works. They confuse busyness with influence. They confuse micromanagement with mastery. But what they're really doing is trying to dominate what was never meant to be dominated. The harder you try to control everything, the faster everything slips away. The state collapses when the prince clings too tightly. The empire falls when the emperor becomes obsessed with holding every border. The man loses himself when he tries to fix every detail in his world. Why? Because obsession over control is always rooted in fear, and fear makes your actions sloppy, predictable, and weak. Look around. The people who appear the most anxious, those constantly adjusting, over-explaining, planning every angle, these are not powerful people. These are people afraid of unpredictability, but unpredictability is the natural law of the world. You cannot force life into submission. You can only learn to dance with its unpredictability, like a strategist does on a battlefield. Power doesn't come from controlling everything. Power comes from precision. Precision means knowing exactly which battle is worth fighting and letting the rest burn. A powerful mind doesn't chase perfection. It sharpens one weapon for one kill at the right moment. The rest is noise. Machiavelli's brilliance lay in this understanding. He didn't believe in the fantasy of controlling the masses with rigid systems. He believed in managing perception. He knew that if a prince tries to rule through pure force, he will exhaust his resources. But if he uses illusion, timing, fear, and influence, he doesn't need full control. He only needs enough pressure in the right places, and that's what most men don't grasp. They try to control how people think of them. They rehearse conversations in their minds, imagining the perfect response to every possible opinion. They obsess over why someone took 3 hours to reply, why they weren't invited to the meeting, why things didn't go exactly as planned. They try to micromanage every emotion in the room, every reaction, every detail of a future that doesn't even exist yet. That's not power, that's mental slavery. The Machiavellian mind doesn't operate like this. It doesn't aim to control everything. It observes everything, it waits, it studies, it identifies leverage. It doesn't rush into every decision. It moves when the odds are skewed in its favor. That's what makes it dangerous. While others are panicking, adjusting, worrying, the one with precision remains still. Until the moment he strikes, you think power means being everywhere, doing everything, knowing it all. No, that only creates exhaustion. Power means appearing effortless. It means doing less, but doing it with devastating impact. And the truth is, control will always be reactive. You're trying to respond to life. You're trying to anticipate every variable, but precision, real power, is proactive. You don't need to respond to every move when you've already designed the board. You don't need to know every outcome when you've shaped the game so that any outcome benefits you. So ask yourself, are you trying to master life by clinging to it, by tightening every grip, controlling every person, scripting every moment? Or are you willing to drop the illusion and instead become dangerous with your focus? You will notice the most powerful people in history weren't trying to control everyone. They were shaping the system. They weren't involved in every conversation. They made themselves scarce and valuable. They didn't try to convince the world. They made the world come to them. Power is quiet. It is not in screaming commands, fixing problems, or constantly managing reactions. It is in waiting for the exact opening. It is in knowing when to speak one sentence that changes everything. It is in knowing which lever to pull and when, because real precision creates the illusion of control without ever needing it, and that is what Machiavelli would call true mastery. Power does not belong to the loudest voice. It does not belong to the one who talks the most, begs the most, or panics the fastest. It belongs to the one who does not flinch. In any room, in any crisis, in any confrontation, the one who remains calm wins. Not because calmness is kindness, but because calmness is control. And people instinctively obey whoever appears to be in control. You have seen it in meetings, in arguments, in public. Someone starts shouting, over-explaining, trying desperately to be understood. They fumble for words. They defend themselves too quickly. And though they may be right, they still look weak. Because desperation, no matter how justified, smells like weakness. Now picture the opposite. A man sits silently. He watches. He speaks slowly, only when needed. His words are measured, not frantic. He doesn't interrupt. He doesn't chase approval. He doesn't argue to be accepted. He speaks to be heard, and the room bends toward him. Why? Because calmness suggests certainty, and certainty, real or fake, is power. Machiavelli knew that appearances rule the world. It's not about who you are, it's about what you project. And the calm man projects something that cannot be faked, internal strength, that makes people trust him or fear him or both. Because when someone stays calm under pressure, others assume they know something the rest do not. Calmness is interpreted as knowledge, as confidence, as superiority. It creates doubt in others and power in you. The desperate, on the other hand, reveal too much. They show their hand. Their emotions are scattered. Their urgency gives away their intentions. They want something badly. And in power games, wanting too much is a fatal flaw. The moment people sense your desperation, they realize they can manipulate you. They will stall. They will make you chase. They will test your limits. And eventually, they will discard you. So many people think that being expressive will earn them loyalty. That if they are honest and open about their feelings, others will respect their vulnerability. But in Machiavellian reality, vulnerability must be used like a weapon, not offered like a gift. There is a time to reveal. But never in the moment of pressure, never in the heat of conflict. The one who reveals less controls more. Calmness isn't just about silence. It's about posture, timing, breathing, restraint. It's the ability to sit in tension without dissolving. And this skill is rare because most people cannot handle discomfort. They must react, they must fix, they must fight or flee. But the powerful remain still, watching, waiting. That stillness creates fear in enemies, confidence in allies, and confusion in everyone else. Watch leaders in history. The most feared kings did not scream. They whispered. The most respected generals did not panic during war. They were still in thought while the world burned around them, and that calmness radiated dominance. People followed them not because they demanded loyalty, but because their presence made others feel smaller, less certain, less prepared. When you stay calm, people lean in. They wait for your next word. They second, guess their own. You create a psychological imbalance without saying a single sentence. You make others feel like they're playing catch-up, and that feeling makes them surrender little by little. Their tone softens, their pace slows. They try to match your energy, and in doing so, they give you control. Now ask yourself, how do you respond when tension rises? Do you raise your voice to prove your point? Do you send a long message to clarify your position? Do you explain yourself more than necessary to seem fair or kind or good? Every unnecessary word you speak under pressure chips away at your authority. Every frantic gesture reveals your emotional dependency. Every emotional reaction proves to others that you're not leading, you're reacting. People obey the calm because calmness shows hierarchy. The calm man appears above conflict, not because he is unaware of it, but because he chooses when to engage. And that choice is what makes others follow, not because they love him, not because they agree, but because he has mastered what most cannot: emotional discipline. There is no respect for the man who pleads, no loyalty for the one who panics. Even in personal relationships, romantic, social, professional, the one who is calm, detached, unshaken, becomes the center of gravity. Others orbit him. They seek his approval, his attention, his reaction, and the more he withholds it, the more valuable it becomes. That is how invisible power works. It isn't taken, it is magnetized. They call it luck. They call it chance. They say some people are simply born with it. That mysterious force that makes things fall into place. The right moment, the perfect opportunity, the last minute escape. But Machiavelli had a different name for it. He called it fortuna, not a myth, not magic, but a force that rewards a certain kind of person. And that person is never the frantic one, never the desperate one, never the one who clings to control like a dying man. Fortuna, Machiavelli wrote, favors the bold, but more accurately, she favors the unmoved, because life is not a fair system. It doesn't pay the most effort. It doesn't always reward the most preparation. What it often rewards is the one who waits, without flinching, the one who stands still while others scramble, the one who refuses to beg, refuses to panic, and refuses to act out of fear. In the world of power, the man who can stay unmoved becomes the most dangerous man in the room. You've been told to chase, to try harder, to do more, to always be busy, that if you just hustle more aggressively, life will give you what you want. But Fortuna doesn't work like that. She resists those who try to force her. She evades those who chase too loudly. She watches, she waits, and then she gives herself to the one who doesn't need her. That is the paradox Machiavelli understood. He watched men fall from power not because they lacked talent or intelligence, but because they reacted too quickly. They tried to fix everything. They tried to secure every outcome. They panicked at the first sign of loss, and in doing so, they exposed their weakness to Fortuna, and she turned away. But the unmoved man, the one who could take betrayal without breaking, failure without spiraling, delay without doubting, that man intimidated fortune itself, because he was not depending on her. He was preparing for her arrival without relying on her approval. He could move swiftly when the moment came, but he never reached for it like a beggar. He allowed it to come to him, and when it did, he was ready. Not hopeful, but dangerous. This is what separates those who rise from those who burn out. The ones who rise understand one thing: nothing moves faster than stillness. The man who can stand in the storm and wait, eyes open, nerves calm, gains power others can't see. Because while the world spins in chaos, his position becomes stronger. Not because the world got easier, but because he didn't let it change him. Think of the political rulers who endured, the generals who waited years for one perfect campaign, the businessmen who sat quietly while the market collapsed and built empires from the ashes. They were not the loudest men, they were not the most emotional, they were the most composed. They moved like chess players, every piece deliberate, every silence planned, every delay used as leverage. Fortuna isn't impressed by anxiety. She is drawn to certainty, and certainty is created not by controlling everything, but by controlling yourself. The unmoved man doesn't chase because he knows what chasing reveals. It reveals neediness, it reveals lack, it reveals fear, and power dies the moment it looks afraid. When you don't chase, people notice. When you don't react, people wonder. When you don't flinch, people hesitate. You create gravity. You make others adjust their movements around yours. You set the tempo of interaction. And now you are no longer just participating. You are shaping the outcome. You are not in the crowd. You are the silent figure they're all watching, wondering when, and if you'll move. This applies to every realm. In war, the unmoved commander forces his enemies to reveal themselves first. In negotiation, the unmoved man lets the other side overplay their hand. In relationships, the unmoved individual becomes the one people try to win, not the one trying to win them, because there is something rare, almost unnerving, about someone who simply refuses to be shaken. And this refusal is not coldness, it is control. It's not about detachment from the world, it's about dominance over your own reactions. Most people have no control over their inner temperature. One insult and they explode. One failure and they collapse. One delay and they unravel, but not the unmoved. They remain steady, and in that steadiness, Fortuna begins to turn. She doesn't respond to noise. She doesn't respond to begging. She responds to power, and power lives in the man who doesn't flinch when the doors stay closed, who doesn't beg for openings, who simply waits, sharpening his edge, knowing that when the wheel turns, and it always does, he will be the one holding the blade. Now you see the truth. You were taught to chase control, to worry as a form of responsibility, to speak loudly, move constantly, react quickly. You were taught that force creates fortune, that desperation proves dedication, that noise is strength. But Machiavelli saw the flaw in all of it, because real power does not worry, it does not grasp for control, it does not tremble under pressure, it does not move to be seen, it waits, it watches, and then it strikes, with precision. Worry is not caution, it is chaos. The illusion of control is what keeps men trapped. But when you stop worrying, when you drop the obsession with controlling everything and everyone, something strange happens. Life bends, people shift, opportunity appears. Why? Because calmness is rare, because clarity is feared, because stillness, true stillness, is often the most aggressive move a man can make. You don't win by reacting. You win by becoming the one they must react to. You don't lead by explaining yourself. You lead by commanding silence. You don't gain fortune by chasing it. You earn it by becoming the kind of person fortune dares not ignore. So the moment you stop worrying, everything starts to go well, not because the world becomes easier, but because you become unshakable. And in this world, unshakable is untouchable.